Hi, welcome everybody.
Thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you so much for being here to listen to our lovely actresses perform today. These actresses have been working together for 9 weeks or so, reading different plays and then sharing some personal reflections and stories surrounding the themes of those plays. So today we're going to present some little excerpts from the plays and also some of the stories. Do you want to talk a little bit about
Some of them knew they were actresses before they got here. Some of them found it out over the course. I think they had some idea from the course description that they would be reading plays together, which is what actors do, and thinking about them. Some of them discovered when they got here that we were really interested in their personal responses, personal reflections, and personal stories prompted by the plays. We don't really think it's an educational theater experience. We're from Educational Theater Company. We don't think it's an educational theater experience if you don't hear a little something from the artists and not just the playwrights. And so you'll see that that has converted these actors into playwrights. They created stories with us, and then we worked to sort of anonymize and fictionalize the scripts into a nice narrative flow inspired by the original plays. The plays varied wildly, I would say, but there was a certain structure to it. This is Elizabeth Kitsos-Kang, and I'm Tom Mallon. Since Elizabeth has a special interest, I would say, in 19th and 20th century realism and beyond, and I have a special interest in classical material, we worked, on my end, we worked with some very old plays, and the two that you're going to hear today, one is by a woman writing in 1000 AD, a nun who was writing over 1,000 years ago.
Wasn't she the first woman playwright?
Essentially the first female playwright that we know of.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty neat. And the others from even earlier, from 500 AD, this golden age that the Indians had in their Sanskrit drama. Both of them are luckily translated into modern English, and so I think you'll understand, and as our actors did, maybe even identify with some of the stories that you hear in those ancient plays. And then our other...
And then the three selections from the sort of more modern theater is, we're going to do a piece from Hedda Gabler, which is Henrik Ibsen, and then some stories that were born from that play. And then a selection from A Streetcar Named Desire by Tennessee Williams. Yeah, you know that play? Cool.
It's a classic.
And it is. And then of course a few stories from that. And then the last piece today is actually not from a play. I spent one of my classes, because Tom and I sort of taught, we took turns teaching. We taught a couple of classes together, and then we also taught individually. One of the classes I taught, which I hadn't done here before, or done in our county classes before, but which was really fun, I thought, was to do a class just on acting techniques. And Stanislavski, who was the father of modern theater, he started the Moscow Art Theater, and a lot of his disciples are probably names you'll know, like Stella Adler and Stanford Meisner and Uta Hagen. A lot of the people who have become theorists over the years were sort of based their theories on his theory, his method is what it's called, really. So we don't have a reading from Stanislavski, but we do have some responses. We did an acting technique class where the ladies did some scenes and worked on certain acting techniques, and you'll see some of that in our performance today because they're so accomplished. So we'll do some selections from that as well.
Please turn off your cell phones. We'll give you a few seconds to do that while we have a seat. Thank you so much for being here.
Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks for being here. Okay, so our first piece today is from Hedda Gabler by Henrik Ibsen, and we're doing a short scene from Act 1, Scene 2.
What sort of man is your husband, Thea? I mean, in everyday life, is he kind to you?
I'm sure he means well and everything.
I should think he must be altogether too old for you. There is at least 20 years difference between you, is there not?
Yes, That's true, too. Everything about him is repellent to me. We have not a thought in common. We have no single point of sympathy, he and I.
But is he not fond of you all the same, in his own way?
Oh, I really don't know. I think he regards me simply as a useful property. And then it doesn't cost much to keep me. I am not expensive.
That is stupid of you.
It cannot be otherwise, not with him. I don't really think he cares for anyone but himself, and perhaps a little for the children.
And for Eilert Lovborg, Thea?
For Isla's Lovborg? What puts that into your head?
Well, my dear, I should say, when he sends you after him all the way to town, and besides, you said so yourself to Tessman.
Did I? Suppose I did. No, I may just as well make a clean breast of it at once, for it must all come out in any case.
Why, my dear Thea?
Well, to make a long story short, my husband did not know that I was coming.
What? Your husband didn't know it?
No, of course not. For that matter, he was away from home himself. He was traveling. Oh, I could bear it no longer. Hedda, I couldn't indeed, so utterly alone as I should have been in the future.
Well, and then?
So I put together some of my things, what I needed most, as quietly as possible, and then I left the house.
Without a word.
Yes, and took the train to town.
To think of you daring to do it.
What else could I possibly do?
But what do you think your husband will say when you go back home again?
Back to him?
Of course.
I shall never go back to him again.
Then you have left your home for good and all.
Yes, there was nothing else to be done.
Then to take flight so openly.
Oh, it's impossible to keep things of that sort secret.
But what do you think people will say of you there?
They may say what they like for aught I care. I have nothing but what I had to do.
Excellent, very nice. So from this play, so you saw in this first scene, it was these two women talking about Thea's husband, and we started talking a little bit about relationships and marriage, and then we started talking about double standards between men and women. So that became the theme of our pieces in this next section. So we have a couple little pieces that we're going to read for you. I'm wondering, Pam, would you mind reading the first one for me, please? Thank you.
The double standard between men and women does still exist today. It does. A woman's job is to take care of the kids. I guess the younger generation is changing in that way a little bit. But basically, it's understood that women are the main caregivers for kids. And now, basically, you've got to work. You've got to take care of the kids. You've got to get them to school, volunteer at their school. You've got to do all the heavy lifting.
My daughter and her husband, they're like the modern couple. Everything's equal. Everything's fine. But when they had a baby, one day I was there with them and she and I were going out. And just as we turned to leave, he said, "Well, what do I do with him?" And she turned around and said, "I don't have any magic secrets. You're a smart person. You figure it out." And you know, she said to me just recently, "You know, Mom, that's the smartest thing I ever did. Because now he takes full responsibility when I'm not there. 100%. He comes up with the ideas of what to do or where to go. But our friends aren't like that. When we go to their house, the husband is always saying, well, should I do this? What should I do here? And my daughter said, you know, I think I empowered him in that moment without even realizing it. And I said, yes. And you empowered yourself at the same time. Because you said, what makes you think I have the answers? I don't know any more about it than you. I never had a baby before. How would I know what to do? I'm not different from you, is what she was really saying.
It takes two, you know. Women are expected to be so strong and so tough. Remember when Hillary Clinton cried? She got so much flack for that. A man can do that and it's considered so great because he's showing his soft side. If a woman in politics cries, it's considered weak. A strong woman like Hillary Clinton is considered stubborn or out of line. But a strong man is considered powerful, a leader. That's a huge double standard.
It's not an equal world for women and men. However, when you compare previous generations, now women can at least, if the opportunity arises and circumstances are good, they can take it. They can become CEOs of a company, and they can do things that they were never able to do. Of course, it's much harder than it is for a man, because there are so many obstacles. But at least there are role models, women, who have done it.
Things are different in other ways too. You see more situations where the woman is going out to work while the men are staying at home and taking care of the children, like in my family. A prime example is my son. He was laid off temporarily because some of these firms are closing and things like that. So my daughter-in-law went out to work. And he's doing a good job of it. And it's nice for the kids to have bonding time with their father.
Cultures make a difference too. In Peru, when I was growing up, it was different. My father and mother were separated. I was just finishing high school and asked my father if he would have me go to school, to college. And he said, oh, you're a girl. You know how to read and write. And that's enough for a woman. He didn't have me. I had a younger brother, and my father said, he's a boy. He needs to go to school. So we need to put all of our money together to get him an education. But he never let me go to school. I was mad at him for a long time.
My mother was the same way. Her parents could have afforded to send her to school. They had 2 sons and my mom. And they sent her to 2 brothers to very good colleges. But they only offered her 1 year of finishing school. That was the culture of the time, I guess. They could afford school, but the expectations for girls were different. Finishing school was kind of like a 5th year of high school. But not really, because it was a separate year. And often you spent some time in Europe afterwards, and they taught you French, and you learned about music and how to entertain and how to run the house. You learned to be cultured and insert well. Well, be the good entertainer, the good life.
I had a very close friend who worked for the U.S. government in Social Security in the 60s. And they told her they wouldn't promote her because she was a single woman. And this man who had a family needed the job. Even though she scored higher and she was much more capable of that position, they told her she couldn't have it. That was a big double standard.
Following the Second World War, women went out and worked. But then the men came home and they all needed jobs. And that's when they would say, okay, the men need jobs, so you're out. That's where that whole thing started. Women just said, okay. They had no economic independence. They had no choice.
I'm 68, so my generation is right on the cusp. The women were the mothers, the homemakers. I remember when I was a young woman, I couldn't get a credit card. And when I got a job, I was hired for less money than a fella doing the same thing. But I think it takes the next generation down to see. I saw my mom struggling and working and requiring her kids to be more independent thinkers and independent people. She wanted us to turn around and take charge of ourselves. And bit by bit, I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, but bit by bit, it's changing. It's like a democracy. It's a process. And young people are right on the cusp of that now.
Excellent. Very nice.
You'll see that in spite of the eclectic nature of the plays, certain themes really became a major thread, and gender issues was definitely high on the list. Ibsen writes deliberately about gender issues, but our next playwright, this young woman, this nun from the year 1000, did as well. Even though she has a major theme, Christian values, you'll see that she definitely looks at them through I would say, the lens of a nun. Actually, let's have a look. All right. So this is a play called Dulcicius, and it is by Rosvita, Sister Rosvita, from the year 1000.
Bow your head to the gods, and in this deference, be an example to your sisters, that they may be freed.
Let those who wish to incur the wrath of the Most High bow before idols. As for me, I will not dishonor my head, which has been anointed with kingly oil, by abasing myself at the feet of idols.
Enough of this presumptuous talk. Let these girls be taken away and put to the tortures.
That is what we most desire, to bear the cruelest torture for the love of Christ.
Let these stubborn girls who defy our orders be bound with chains, be cast into a prison, and be examined by Governor Dulcicius.
Soldiers, produce the girls whom you hold in prison.
See, these are the ones you asked for.
Wonderful, what beauty, what charm, how extraordinary these girls are.
They are truly beautiful.
I am captivated by the very sight of them.
You're not surprised.
I am thrilled. Do you think they will return my love?
We do not believe that you will have any success.
And why not?
Because their faith is steadfast.
No matter. I will persuade them with a little flattery.
They despise flattery.
Then I shall treat them to punishment.
That matters little to them. They will suffer punishment without yielding.
Then what can I do?
That is for you to determine.
Well, lock them up in the inner workroom near the porch, the one in which the serving pans are kept.
And why in that place?
Because I can visit them easily and often.
It shall be as you command.
What are the prisoners doing at this time of night?
They are singing hymns.
Let us go nearer. Take your lanterns and guard the doors without. I will go inside and enjoy the embraces which I greatly desire.
Enter, and we will await your return.
What is that clattering noise outside the door?
That wretched Dulcicius has come in.
My God, protect us.
So be it.
What is the clashing of pots and kettles and frying pans?
I will look out. Come, I beg you, and peek through this small crack.
What is it?
Look, the foolish fellow must be out of his mind. He thinks he is embracing us.
What is he doing?
Now he hugs the kettle, now the frying pans, and now he hugs the pots, caressing them with soft kisses.
How ridiculous.
His face, his hands, his clothes, they are soiled and dirty. With the soot clinging to them, he looks like an Ethiopian.
That's fine. His body should turn as black as his soul, which is possessed by the devil.
He seems to be going. Let us see what the soldiers who are waiting for him are going to do when he goes outside.
Who is this vile, disreputable creature? Who comes here in these filthy rags? Let's cuff him and pitch him down the steps. Don't let him come any closer.
Woe is me! What has come over me? Are not my clothes splendid? Am I not neat and clean in my appearance? Yet everyone who meets me shows disgust, as if I were a horrible monster. I shall return to my wife and learn from her what has happened to me. But look, here she comes, her hair disheveled, and her whole household follows her, weeping.
Alas, alas, my lord, what has happened to you? Are you out of your mind? You've become a laughing stock to the Christians.
Now at last I know, these Christians have made a fool of me.
What troubles me more than anything, and makes me very sad, is that you are ignorant of what has happened to you.
I'll order these insolent girls to be dragged forth and stripped of their clothes in public, that they may experience the mockery which I have been subjected to.
And then we have some personal reflections that we can applaud for that. This is hard material. These are personal reflections on Belsitzius by Sister Rosvita on worldliness, martyrdom, and the abuse of power.
I think of nuns as cloistered, especially in the Middle Ages. They even received communion through a peephole rather than be seen by a male. But the nuns must have been peeking out at the world too, just as we see the girls do in the play. This Rosvita knows so much about the everyday common world. She couldn't have always been protected or cloistered if she can write so knowingly about relationships, the way people talk to each other, the soldiers, the men in power. Where did she learn so much?
This is a play about innocent girls becoming martyrs. But it's also a play about a man abusing power and his wife standing by him no matter what. And like Anthony Weiner or Mark Sanford, the man ends up looking somewhat silly. Rosvita portrays his infidelity and makes him look ridiculous.
At the beginning of the play, society is saying, come and be married and be accepted. But the protagonists, the three virgins, are putting themselves above that, choosing the hard road of not getting married in order to be true to their convictions. In spite of what society dictates, Rosvita seems to see the married woman as lesser. The three girls have names, but the wife is a stock character. She isn't even given a name. She's just the wife of. She's presented with her hair disheveled and weeping, and she's awful. She blames the victims for her husband's attempted rape and stands by her man, no matter how devilish his behavior has been.
The behavior seems to predominate among these educated men in high positions, even though the thing they want from the girl is so basic and primitive. But the girls who are martyred when they refuse him, they reach a higher level according to this play, something much higher than the terrible people around them. They're above the petty people and worries of their time, above the mundane.
Very nice. So our third piece is Tennessee Williams is the playwright, and this is from A Streetcar Named Desire. And the people reading are Toby and Lee. They will be reading a scene between Stella and Blanche, who are sisters. Blanche has just come to visit Stella at her house, and she's learning a little bit about Stella's life.
You seem a little bit nervous or overwrought or something.
Will Stanley like me? Or will I just be a visiting in-law, Stella? I couldn't stand that.
We get along fine together if you just try not to, compare him with the men that we went out with at home.
Is he so different?
Yes, a different species.
In what way? What's he like?
Oh, you can't describe someone you're in love with. Here's a picture of him,
An officer?
a master sergeant in the engineer corps. Those are decorations.
He had those on when you met him?
I assure you, I wasn't just blinded by all the brass.
That's not what
But
I
of
meant.
course, there were things to adjust myself to later on.
Such as his civilian background. How did he take it when you told him I was coming?
Oh, Stanley doesn't know that.
You haven't told him?
He's on the road a good deal.
Oh, travels?
Yes.
Good. I mean, isn't it?
I can hardly stand it when he is away for
Phil.
When he's away for a week, I go near wild.
Just
When he comes back, I cry in his lap. Like a baby.
I guess that's what's meant by being in love.
Very nice. Okay, so now, thank you, you're so sweet. Okay, so now these are the reflections based on the Streetcar Named Desire, the conversations that were born of discussing the play and discussing the roles and the women, and the theme that it surrounds that we sort of came up with is dependence on men / the union of marriage. We'll start with Catherine.
Now it's a lot less. But even then, men were supposed to be the head of the household, the strong person. I think very often the woman was just as strong, but she had to manipulate or maneuver to make the man believe that she made all the decisions and did everything. But she was the one who really kept the whole thing going, like Stella in Streetcar. She's like the woman behind the man, but she's the strong one.
I think women aren't as dependent on men now because there's so much more acceptance for people who are gay. Gay people, lesbians, can get married in some places now and have babies. They don't have to depend on men to have a full life.
There are marital societies where women are in charge of the house. In my house, my mom was the boss. She controlled everything, and not necessarily in a nice way. She wore the pants in the family. My father, he had the best education and was very successful, but she called all the shots. And he was okay with that because he had no choice. He was mild-mannered and she was dominating. I think it could have been better if things were more equal. I saw my dad suffer. My brother, sister, I realized that he was such a smart gentleman and sensitive person, and so we worried about him, and she totally dominated him. I am Jewish, and I think the Jewish culture does tend to lean more towards the marital type of relationships.
My parents were raised with a certain amount of money and security, and then the Depression hit, and they were reduced to very, very little. But they had their education and all. And my father ran the house and he had a small business. The thing I really think about when I think of them is that he was a gentleman and she was a lady. And they treated each other with respect. My mother was in charge as far as things at home. And my father could decide if we were going to go to war or more about big issues, because he was more interested in that kind of thing. But it was great for that time. She was never subservient. It was appreciated. My father said, "Your mother saved my life by marrying me." We had a lot of money and we had a certain life, and then we lost it all. And he wanted to be a writer. He lived on the French Riviera when Fitzgerald was there, and he even had a couple of books published. But he had to come home because of the Depression and get a job and provide for the family for 6 kids. He later said in later life, she made it work. She made his world. The respect between them was very reassuring to me as a young girl. I know I was fortunate.
My daddy always said, and he was a strong man. You got to have a strong woman to make a strong man. And we did all right. A lot of times he'd say something and she would come in and say, "Oh no, I don't think it's gonna be that way." He'd say, "Okay." She was a strong woman and he liked that. So did I.
My mother wanted to work so badly. My dad would not let her because he could take care of us. And it was not her responsibility to work, it was his responsibility. And all she really wanted was to work. I mean, she did everything right. She kept a clean house, she baked and everything, but she never wanted to do it. She wanted to work. She was never happy about that. But still, he wouldn't let her. You know, it was interesting though, as his daughter, because my father insisted that I get an education and that I become independent so I could take care of myself. It was so completely different. He basically insisted that I go to college in case I married some jerk. And then I'd be okay. And it was like, really? It was just never questioned that I would go to college. I never quite figured that out. Well, maybe it was just, I think he was just determined, I think, to give me things that he never had. He was the oldest and his family was very poor. It was the Depression. And as a young kid, he had to go off to CC camp so that his parents could have food. And he was always that guy, always that one that was dependent. And while he was fine with that role, I think he didn't want me to be independent. He wanted me, even as a woman, to be independent.
I was the only girl in my high school to go to college. Girls weren't going to college then. I lived in a small town in Pennsylvania. But many of these same girls went to college later, in their 50s. Some of them even got master's degrees in their 50s and 60s. They put it off, but eventually they went and got an education, even though they were already adults.
I was talking to a professor the other day, and he said, you know, we don't have to worry about girls anymore. Girls are going to college. Girls are in the profession. Girls are doing things. We have to worry more about those boys. I think more girls are in college now than boys. More girls are graduating from college now than boys, and more boys are dropping out. I told my girls, I said, you're going to school. You're going to get a good education. Because if you get married one day and the man is no good, you can say, let the door hit you with a good Lord did you.
My parents divorced when I was little, so my grandmother raised me and my brother. And she never went to school herself because her mother died when she was 8. She had to help the family out and work. Then her husband had a stroke, so he wasn't able to do much. So she was the man and the woman in my home. And me being the oldest grandchild, I had to do everything that she did, like cut wood, wash clothes, work in the garden, and do all of that. And she wanted to make sure that we went to school. So I did all those things and went to school. I finished high school and then worked for Arlington County for 25.5 years. But since my grandmother never went to school, I had to teach her ABCs. So while I was going to school, every night after dinner, I would get a tablet and we would write. And once I taught her ABCs, I taught her to write her name. And finally, after a while, she was able to print her name, and she didn't have to put an X on her checks anymore because she could write her own name. I gave her that sense of independence. I really felt good about that.
Very nice. Send it to you.
Okay. And everybody might want to speak up just a little bit.
Yeah.
To make sure they get all the way out to the back row, the nosebleed section. This is our second, another very ancient play from the 5th century India, a tradition I wasn't familiar with until just a couple of years ago. A lot of people don't know that these people were writing plays when Europe was not producing plays. This play was written in Sanskrit, and I'll quickly set up the situation. The king visits a sacred grove on a hunting party and falls deeply in love with a young country girl who's out there living among the hermits and monks, the holy men that tend the grove. Her name is Shakuntala. She's the title character. And when the king falls in love, he does the right thing and proposes marriage, and it's all going to work out fine. But he's got to get back to the palace, and he'll come back and pick her up later, or maybe the hermits can deliver her. So the happy couple is separated, and while her friends, this is the scene you're going to hear, while her friends are sort of collecting flowers to celebrate the happy celebration, a guest shows up. He feels very slighted because Shakuntala, the bride, is thinking about her new husband, and she's sort of spaced out and not being as hospitable as she could. And so the guest, sort of like in Sleeping Beauty, the guest curses her with this curse, that her beloved will not remember her. And then we see the scene where she shows up at the king's palace, and sure enough, there's trouble. This is from Act 4, A Curse on Love's Memory.
I cannot help feeling somewhat uneasy in my mind. How so? You know that the hermits have gratefully dismissed the king from our sacred grove, and he has returned to the capital, leaving Shakuntala under our care in the society of his royal consorts. Will he not forget his Shakuntala?
Be at ease. Persons of noble nature are not so destitute of all honorable feelings. We have gathered flowers enough for the sacred offering.
Let us return to our dear Shakuntala, for her mind is with her king. She attends not to the guest at the hermitage.
Hold there. See you not that I'm here?
That must be the voice of the guest announcing his arrival.
Sure, Shakuntala is not absent from the cottage.
But her heart is absent, I fear.
Woe to thee, maiden. For daring to sight a guest like me, shall I stand here unwelcome? Shalt thou rash maid? Thus said it not the ever sacred rights of hospitality, and fix thy thoughts upon the cherished object of thy love while I'm present. Thus I curse thee. Then he, even he of whom you thinkest, he shall think no more of thee, nor in his heart retain thine image. Vainly shalt you strive to waken his remembrance of the past. He shall disown thee, even as he thought, roused from his midnight drunkenness, denies the words he uttered in his revealings.
And this is from Act 5, The Curse Confirmed. Now we're at the king's palace.
Welcome, hermits of the sacred grove, to our palace. I trust the venerable Kanwa is in good health.
He bade us greet your majesty and deliver this message.
Let me hear his commands.
He bade us say that he feels happy in giving his sanction to the marriage which your majesty contracted with this lady, his daughter, privately and by mutual agreement. Since, therefore, she expects soon to be mother of thy child, receive her into thy palace, that she may perform with thee the ceremonies prescribed by religion on such an occasion.
How I tremble for my lord's reply.
What strange proposal is this?
His words are like fire to me.
What do I hear? Dost thou then hesitate, monarch? Thou art well acquainted with the ways of the world, and knowest that a wife, however virtuous and discreet, if she lives separate from her wedded lord, is marked for vile suspicion. Let her dwell beside her husband.
Do you really mean to assert that I ever married this lady?
Oh, my heart. Her worst misgivings are confirmed.
I cannot answer a question which is based on a mere fabrication.
Such inconstancy is fortunately not common except in men intoxicated by power.
Is that remark aimed at me?
Be not ashamed, my girl. Let me remove thy veil for a little space. Thy husband will then recognize thee.
What charms are here revealed before mine eyes?
Great king, why art thou silent?
My revered husband, but no, I dare not address thee by this title, since thou hast refused to acknowledge our union. Noble king, it is not worthy of thee to betray an innocent-minded girl and disown her in such terms after having so lately and so solemnly plighted thy vows to her in marriage.
Be such a crime far from my thoughts. I will hear no more.
That's the end of our exhibition. So much variety in these acting choices. It's wonderful. These are our personal reflections that came up upon hearing Shakuntala. And I would say the main uniting thread was the question, do you believe in curses?
I find it interesting that no one in the play suspects there may have been a curse. They think the king forgetting her, or pretending to, is just a natural response of the powerful. It seems like, for the people, this kind of irresponsible behavior, of making vows to this girl, then abandoning and denying her, is just to be expected. I think this kind of belief, like the Greeks believing a curse comes from the gods, or from other supernatural sources, like in this Sanskrit play, takes the responsibility off of the people for their own behavior and their faith.
Well, I don't believe in curses. Or at least it never worked when I tried to do it.
I don't know that I believe in curses, but I've met people who seem to go through life under a dark cloud. You know, their brother gets sick and then they have to take care of their uncle, and as soon as that goes away, it's something else. They can't get out from under it.
But whether or not you believe in it, if someone does curse you, it makes you uneasy. You know, even if it's a stranger, if someone says something angry, throws a curse at you, it still shakes you up. It still holds some power.
I have a story to tell. When I was just a little girl, my grandfather and I were out in the yard, and a fortune teller lady came along, a gypsy. And you know, they want money for seeing your future. He told her, I don't want to hear about my future. And he cursed at her. So she started cursing us. She said, well, that little girl over there, she's not going to be walking good. And her legs are going to be twisted. And you know, all these years later, I do have problems with my legs. And so I do believe there may be some truth in it. But I don't think that belief contradicts my religious tradition. It's not part of God's plan to keep you out of evil, but to see you through it. He didn't say we wouldn't have to bear it, just that he would get you through it. And sometimes, like Greeks, it's really the sins of our forefathers that get visited upon us. My grandfather shouldn't have cursed that lady, because you have to please God in all things if you can. And it wasn't all my grandfather anyway, because you know how kids are. I came right behind him telling off the old lady, saying my little bit to it too.
I think of another kind of curse. The expectations people place on you as a child. I think of family members cursing each other. When they get angry, your parents say you never amount to anything, and you internalize it and become that prophecy. My sister was a very difficult child, and I remember one time my mother saying to her, I hope your children are just the same to you. And it might be because of the psychology, but sure enough, my sister's son made my mother's prophecy come true. I think
I think we sometimes think about illnesses that way too. Either you're cursed, or you did something to bring it on. Why did I get this? What did I do to give myself this disease? And there's a lot of talk about if we don't do it right, if we don't eat well, we bring cancer or a heart attack on ourselves. Maybe that's true, but maybe that heart attack victim just had a bad heart. There can be a judgmental quality to someone saying, well, of course, he had a heart attack. Look at how he eats. And other people just seem to get lucky with genes. They can eat horribly or smoke like chimneys and seem to never have a day of bad health in their life.
My cousin was diagnosed with cancer, and the first thing she said to me was, I don't understand why this happened to me. I've lived my life with integrity. I've been kind to people. And she was going on in that direction, and I said, don't go down that road. It's random. It's not a curse. But that was her first reaction. She was sure she was being punished. She kept saying, why did I get this? Why me? And I'll always remember the doctor said, it doesn't matter. You'll never pin down where this came from, why you got it, and even if you do, what you can do about it. What we do is go from here. Let's work on this. Let's move forward.
Very nice. Our final piece today, we don't have a scene to read because it's the one I told you about where we did acting techniques in class. So these are just some responses to the Stanislavski work and the acting technique class we had. I would say the theme surrounding the discussion was experiences we've had with theater.
I heard on the radio, as I was coming over here today, that in New York, they're going to bring back the play Pippin. And that took me back. I was thinking, I have to see that. Because I had seen a production of Pippin on Broadway in New York in 1972. And I remember there was this song from Pippin that caused me to change my life. It was about seeing what's going on, about looking at your life. The play is about being in your life, not being in the grandstand looking at your life, but actually being in your life, making decisions, not just going along, living to the fullest life that you can. How did that song go? Eagles can go where they fly. I want to be as my spirit runs free. I want to be up in the sky. Changed my life. I divorced my husband. I got into other ways of living. I made other choices about how I wanted to live my life. That song, it made me think. I got the album because back then that's what we had was albums. And it just played and played. I wore the track out. I did. The whole play changed things for me. It was 1972. There was a lot going on for people. People were thinking about what to do with their lives, expressing themselves. That play made a big difference for me. I think it really changed my life for the better.
Now is a totally different time. There are more years behind us than there are in front of us. And I look back and I think, why didn't I become a doctor? Why didn't I think I was smart enough? Why didn't I think I could do these things that everybody's doing now? But you know, that was a period of time for women where it was really hard to make your own choices. Looking back, I realize I probably could have been a doctor. But back then, you never could have convinced me I could.
Back in the 40s, when I was really young, I loved to sing. I did plays. I always wanted to be chosen. I always wanted to put more into it, to be the center of attention. I was in this play, and I remember I sang this song. I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug around the neck, and a hug around the neck, and a bell and a heat, and I'm talking in my sleep about you, cause I love you, a bushel and a peck, a bushel and a peck, and a hug in the neck, oh doo 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 doo, a doo 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 doo, a doo 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 doo. Do 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 do. I was about 10 years old, and it was about being in love, and with the same boy. And remember, I put my hand up and had to do a stage slap. I had to slap that girl, and in the place. And then I put my arms around the boy, and I was into plays about love. I'm still like that now. I believe in love, but I always think if the boy is with someone else, it's because he doesn't want to be with me. That play made me think that way about love.
Back when my kids were teens, my husband and kids and I used to go to Arena Stage. We had season tickets back when they had a resident company there. We went for many years. It was a family thing. But then seeing the actors in completely different shows, same actors, but in many different shows, month after month, it was a really interesting experience. How can this one actor, who last month played an evil character, this month be the romantic lead? It was really something. They also became familiar people, like a soap opera almost. It was like, what will he do this time? Who will she be? It sparked discussions with my family. We talked about certain actors that we loved to watch or didn't like. And we talked as a family about the different issues that came up in the shows, which was great. It was a great family bonding experience.
I used to see plays in high school, like Gilbert and Sullivan or something. But I go to the theater a lot more now than when I was young. Over the last 10 years, I've been going to the theater constantly. I'm always amazed at what directors and actors do. But I'm also really surprised how people on stage make me cry all the time. I'm like, stop making me cry. I'm so enthralled with the story. I don't want any distractions. I'm just right there. And I can get in the story like it's my story.
You know, after learning about acting today, it made me think how the techniques apply to life. Meaning, I can see how I could use this on the stage. Today I'm going to spend time babysitting my 3 little grandsons. And coming here, I'm thinking, now, what do I want those 3 hours to be like? What is my goal? My objective? Because there are certain things I want to say to them. And if I create the right setting, I can say them. Things about the family, good things, you know. They won't come out unless I pre-plan. So I have to think about what my goal is. And the obstacle is that they will be running around and screaming at the time. And so I have to have tactics in mind. I know their favorite kind of cookies, so I'm going to get a bag of them.
And end of play.
Thank you very much. We would like to, even though you've been sitting for a few minutes, we'd like to invite the audience to participate in a question and answer session before we take off, just a few minutes. if you have questions for the actors, or for me and Elizabeth, but the actors are more interesting, believe me.
Don't be shy. Do you have any questions?
Which were your favorite plays? The ones you read today?
Not Clara. Clara was disappointed that one of the plays we read. Go
We
ahead.
did one about Noah, and his wife was drunk. She wouldn't get on the boat. That was my favorite.
That was a good one. I'll bring you that
I don't know if you realize too that those stories that everyone told, they didn't necessarily ever tell their own story. Sometimes they told their own, and sometimes they didn't. And we sort of switched it up so you never knew who was telling whose story. Except I bet you can guess when Faye's saying that happened.
Is it this time that you will play?
What?
Is it this time that you play in the
First time?
First time.
Yes,
First
yes.
time. It is, yeah.
really nice?
Thank you.
I called you continuous. Maybe en theaters, ¿cómo se dice teatro?
In theater, you're saying it
En
right.
theater. ¿Qué?
That's next. We should take the show on the road to the theater. We have some wonderful natural talents here, but we also have people who have been developing over the 9 weeks or over the 2 sessions. Some of them have done with us, and that's really gratifying for us as teachers.
Yeah, I saw some really interesting things today that I hadn't even seen in rehearsal. People sort of, were really coming alive in a way I hadn't seen them do, which was great. That's so wonderful.
We need the audience.
Yeah.
That's the final ingredient. We always do.
Even the elderly and the actors too.
Even the elderly, especially the elderly. Not that we have any elderly people in this room.
It's never too late to do what you want to do. Yeah. That's right.
More questions about the process or the actors?
Do you ever act out the part that you were talking about? Acting out?
Like get up on our feet,
Yeah.
things. We haven't done that yet.
We've been a little more relaxed than that. This is a funny mixture between a class and a rehearsal process. So we like to take it slow, but I think that acting things out sounds very interesting to me. A scene like the very first one we heard is between 2 women seated, talking to each other. So it felt like we really could have just put them on a sofa and a chair and we pretty much would have had the scene staged. Some of the scenes where you heard all the action, the man hugging and kissing the pots and pans and the girls peeping, it might have been nice to see that acted out. Funny too.
Well, Catherine just turned to me and said, next time. I think that they'd love to do that. I think that I know other people have talked to me about wanting to maybe at some point do some...
Try a scene or 2 on our
Try a scene
feet.
or 2 on our feet, sure. Yeah. So, other thoughts, questions about how we came up with these? Yes.
I want to know, hearing your story read by someone else, how did that make you feel? How, was that a different feeling than reading it yourself?
It's a great question.
Certainly, because we were able to disassociate ourselves. We warmed up with the play itself, and then we moved into the other parts, and someone else read what we were saying very personally in class, because we all shared a good bit. That I think it was a good thing that we moved things around, except for Faye.
I think it's good to read someone else's story because it makes your acting come out. You can act more of how you thought they were doing. It gives you a feeling.
I also remember the first time you heard Mary read one of your stories in class. And you were just giggling. You just loved hearing her tell your story. So isn't it kind of also fun to hear someone else interpret your thoughts?
Yes, it is.
And Rose, you had a remark?
One of the stories that I read today was actually contributed by a person who isn't here today.
Yeah.
And as my turn was coming up, I felt a heavy responsibility to her. I felt that she wasn't here, she wasn't going to say this story herself, but it was a story that changed her life, and how could I do that justice? And I felt a real responsibility to honor her, and to honor her.
And you did.
It came through, you sounded very moved when you read that story, and I was thinking exactly what you just described, that you were experiencing what many actors do, which is you feel this responsibility. In some cases, these playwrights have been long gone for 1,500 years or more, and you feel a responsibility to tell their stories. And then you also, as we were saying, you had the experience of the playwright, hearing someone else disassociate yourself from a role. You know exactly what this story is based on. You can picture your mother or your grandfather, whoever you're talking about, and you get that playwright's experience of hearing someone else breathe new life into this person. Again, not 1,500 years long gone, but somebody gone comes back in the room because you get to hear that.
I like one of the stories that was read. One of the seniors in this room now. I let the door hit you. And the good Lord hit you. But he didn't say where the good Lord hit you. So it's amazing how a playwright can change things.
Well, we had to keep it appropriate.
Thank you so much for all
wait,
the
I think
questions.
Rose
Are there
was
more?
going to say something.
I just
Yes.
wanted to say that hearing someone else say what you said, what's the story you contributed, is really self-affirming too. Because you hear yourself and you hear your words in a different way, and it just affirms your feelings and your life experiences in a different way.
That reflects the feeling I had as each of the personal stories was read, and I didn't know who belonged to whom, but I felt this reflected love and respect from each of you reading the personal stories about the other person or possibly yourself. So it was exactly like you said.
Can I just ask the group of actors, what was your favorite part about the process? Like when you came here each week, what did you look forward to most?
Laughing.
Laughing?
Yeah, I did too, and I look forward to acting because, like I said, I love to act and do,
Really, I guess that doesn't really show. Other thoughts that you were going to say about what you look forward to, Catherine?
I was going to say it's really obvious to the audience. I hope that we developed a great camaraderie here.
The affection.
And friendship and comfort with each other. And I think laying ourselves open to different roles was part of the process that we became friends and co-workers.
Yes, we bonded. Yes, please.
I find it really valuable to remember things. Sometimes the theme brought up something that took me back to something that just came up that I hadn't maybe thought about for a long time. So it was really nice to share that with other people and to hear their stories of things that had happened in their lives that were meaningful.
It gave me a respect for us, each other, and women in a certain age, because we all had a lot of things in our lives, and just sort of made me feel, I don't know, good about being one of us. Not just us, but women of a certain age.
I think the teachers, honest to you and to you, the teachers created the environment and the atmosphere that made all these differences.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mary, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to get the experience of speaking, like in theater.
Just speaking publicly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a big thing. Exactly. Did a beautiful job.
You did it very well.
Well, yes, ma'am.
This took me back as a child when I was growing up, when we used to do the plays at school.
Yeah.
And I used to be one of the main characters.
Yeah.
Really?
Unfortunately, I couldn't attend the class that you had here.
Well, maybe next time.
You belong in this group.
Maybe next
We can
time.
talk for another real soon in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we are. We are trying for another class in the fall, just working out details and scheduling, so don't let it
Newcomers and veterans alike
Welcome.
are welcome.
You're welcome.
Mhm.
Thank you so much again for coming and supporting our